Not the only events in the world. Let's put a form on the page. So we still have our H1. Now let's make a form. Inside that form, let's put a paragraph. Inside that paragraph, let's put a form input. Input. Now, input is an empty element. It has no contents and thus has no closing tag. And a closing tag for input is invalid. But we should put some attributes on it. We'll say type equals text. It's not just any old input, it's a text input. And we'll give it a name so we can refer to it later. Name equals, let's call it person name, camel case like that. All our JavaScript broke, big surprise, but hey, there it is, our input. It broke because that stuff isn't on the page anymore. That's okay. We should probably label that form field. So let's add right above it a label element. Label does have a closing tag. And for its contents, we'll say name. And we should also tell it what input it's labeling. So we'll say for. Label for what? Label for person name. That doesn't change the way the label looks, but it does make a direct association between this label and this input. So for folks using assistive technologies like screen readers, when they tab to that input, it'll read them the label because they know what label is associated with that text field. So it's the right thing to do. All right, so also inside the form, outside that paragraph, I'm going to add a button. I'm going to make the button say go. And this time it's not just any old button. This is a button of type submit. Okay, label, input, submit button. And just in case we have more than one, and let's see, did I do this? Yes. Let's give the form an ID so we can uniquely identify it. I'll call it person-form. IDs and classes, we tend to dasherize instead of camel casing them. Separate multiple words with dashes. So what of it? Well, over here, we no longer want to listen for the button to be clicked. Why? What happens if I type something in here and hit the enter key? I didn't click the button, but I did submit the form. Now that it's a submit button, clicking the button submits the form. And because it's a form and that input is in the form, when I hit enter, it submits the form. So the event I want to listen for now is not the clicking of the button, but the submitting of the form. So when what happens? When the submit happens to what? Not the button, but the form. So I'll say document dot query selector, and I'll grab it by ID. The ID was person-form. So I can say hash person form. Save that to a variable. Const person form equals that query selector. And then to the person form, I can add an event listener. What am I listening for? Not a click this time. The event is called submit. There are all kinds of built-in submits in the DOM. Built-in events. Clicks one, submits one. And what about when we do? submit, we'll change the heading. Again, we do not invoke that method at this time, or that function at this time. We just pass the function as a variable, as an argument to add event listener. Yeah?
This is just going to, it doesn't actually change the heading when you do that.
No, not yet. We have to change our code. Because what is event.target now? It's the form, that's right. It's the thing it's the thing that got submitted. Before it was the thing that got clicked, but this is a submit event, so it should be that. So let's check that out. Let's throw another debugger in here and see what happens. Refresh. Hit enter. Go to my console. Check out event. Yeah, event, a bunch of stuff. Event.target. It's the form. Yay. Okay, let's hit enter. Oh, what? What? All right, well, obviously, event target text content. It's not the event target we want to do that to, is it? We need to grab the H1 const heading, go back to doing this. Document dot query selector H1 heading dot text content equals clicked. Sure. Now that should work. Let's refresh the page. Now watch carefully. I submit the form. I saw it. Did you see it change? And then what? It submitted the dang form, because that's what we did. So just because we're saying do something else when you submit the form doesn't stop it from doing whatever it was going to do anyway. So it still submitted the dang form, which in this case results in refreshing the page. If on a form tag you have an action attribute, you can point it at some URL that it submits to. If you leave that out, it just submits to itself, but it refreshes the page. So sure, it changed the H1, but it refreshed the page before we could ever see it. So we got to stop its default behavior and have it just do what we asked it to do. Let's throw that debugger in there one more time. See what we can do. Refresh, submit. We have this lovely event. What else does event have? Default prevented false. Yeah, I want that to be true. Blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? An event has a method on it, a function called prevent default, which we can call. And then, if we unpause, it doesn't submit the form. So if a particular event has a default behavior in the browser that you don't want, remember, the event is being passed in as an argument, so take that and just call event.preventDefault, and it won't happen anymore. Refresh the page. Whackety smackety, enter. Yay. Now it changed it to clicked, not whackety smackety. It didn't put what we typed in there. And if we're going to bother to have a form field there, it seems like it should probably change the heading to whatever we typed. So how the heck can we get that? Our old friend debugger to the rescue. Let's go ahead and take the form. We know the form is event.target, right? Let's save that to a variable called f. And let's take a look at it. So refresh the page, submit the darn thing, check it out in the console. We have f, that's the form. How can we get to the stuff in there? Well, there's f.elements, which gives us an array-looking thing with the input and the button. So that's nice, but we kind of have to know the index of that input, which isn't terribly helpful. Luckily, we gave that input a name, person name, and guess what that does? Now the form itself has a property, person name, and it's the input. So the target of the event, the thing that got submitted, is the form, right? So we'll save that. Then we can make a variable called name, and we'll set that to f.personname, the name that we happen to give that input. Then heading.textContent equals name. Let's check that out. Refresh. Tappity tappity. Yay, it changed the object HTML input element just like we wanted. Not what you wanted? So what is f.personname? It's the actual input, not what you typed in the input. So how can we get what we typed in there? Well, this is an empty element. It has no closing tag and thus has no contents, so it's not text content. It's value. So f.personname gives us the input. Once we have the input, we can call .value to get what's actually typed in there. Now refresh the page. Type Nolan. Yay! It changed it. You dig? So we're listening for a submit event to occur on person form. And when it is submitted, what are we going to do? Change heading. Change heading receives the event as an argument. We prevent the default behavior for a form submission. We know that the target of the event is the thing on which the event occurred. In other words, the thing that got submitted, which is the form. So we set that to a variable. And because the form contained an input with the name of person name, we can just say .person name on there. But that gives us an input, not whatever's typed into the input. So we call .value on that, and we get what's actually typed. We save that to a variable. We grab the heading from the page. And then we can set the text content of the heading equal to the name, the thing that was typed in the form. Yay! We did it. Pretty exciting. We are pros at handling events now. So let's again make a little commit. Git add dot tells Git pay attention to all my changes since the last commit. Git commit -m actually stores it permanently in my history, but I need to put a message there telling what I did since the previous commit. What did I do since then? What does this commit do? Change the heading when the form is submitted. Git push should sync that with GitHub. And now when I look at my history up there, my 4 commits, I know that at this stage, that's what changed. This was the initial commit. Then we made it so that it changes the heading when the button's clicked. Then we made it so that it handles clicks on the button and the instructions paragraph. Then we made it so that it changes the heading when the form is submitted. So I know what each step of the process did.
Let's say you want to retitle one of your commit. Is that a possible way to do it?
Sort of by rewinding your history and doing it again. Hold that thought. So let's just do one more quick thing.